Welcome back to another edition of the Water Matters podcast. I am Matthew Rolph. Thank you for listening. If you're joining me, this is episode 9 of the Water Matters podcast. I would like to start with a couple of reminders. If you are not yet subscribed to our fortnightly emails, then please, I would highly encourage you to go to watermatters.life. There is a little box on there. You've just got to put your email address in, hit submit. You will receive a few welcome emails, a series of 4, I believe it is, which is just going to tell over the first 4 days. It's just going to tell you what this is all about, what is Water Matters, why did we start this. They're going to introduce you to this podcast, this newsletter, and it's a way of getting started. But after that, you will simply receive a fortnightly email, Water Wednesdays, hashtag Water Wednesdays. If you're ever sharing some of our stuff on socials, you'll receive it fortnightly on a Wednesday morning. And there is so much going on in the world of sustainable water management. One of the reasons we started this was to bring this conversation of water to the surface around more people's homes, offices, lives in general. There's so much that isn't discussed about water. It's such an important topic. And so we would love to just keep increasing the number of people that are part of this Water Matters community. And so if you haven't done that yet, please do so. This episode number 9, is a little bit different. It follows episode number 8, which is our most popular by far. And that was my colleagues Tim Smedley and Callum Balance-Poole, who, if you don't know, so Callum is our marketing manager here at Graph UK. And then Tim is the author of this book here. I'm showing people on the video if you're listening to this audio only. But this book here is The Last Drop, Solving the World's Water Crisis. Tim Smedley released this book a few years ago, and it is the perfect start to anyone new to this world of water management. And so that is a plug for the book. If you haven't read it already, please do so. But Tim and Callum, for episode 8 of this podcast, were at the release of this family of beavers at Nene Wetlands. I still don't know how to say it. I need to learn. But in Northamptonshire, Rushton Lakes, a family of beavers was released into one of the wetlands there a few weeks ago. And Tim and Callum were lucky enough to be present at the release. This is a significant event. This is the first time beavers have not been released in England or for over 400 years, and even further back than that. If you listen to some of the interviews that they carried out with some of the members of the Wildlife Trust who have been working on this project for years. This is a long time in the making. But it's a very significant event that I wanted to share a little bit more about because, where is this coming from? Why are we involved? How has this come to life? So just as a bit of background, if you've listened to previous episodes of this Water Matters podcast, or perhaps you do receive the emails and you've read the About Us page on watermatters.life, you'll know that this is being funded, sponsored primarily at this stage by Graph UK Limited. And Water Matters has been brought to life to talk about more of a broad subject of water management. But it is very much from the support and funding of Graph UK Limited at this point. And Graph have got involved with the Wildlife Trust for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Northamptonshire, by sponsoring the cameras that have been installed where the beavers have been released, so that we can get access to mostly the after dark footage, which is when they're most active, of what the beavers are doing. Now, why have we done this? It's because Graph's business is, a large part of Graph's business is stormwater management. But we wanted to educate people on the fact that stormwater management, there are many, many different ways of managing stormwater and mitigating flood risk. And one of those are nature-based solutions, which beavers are particularly good for. So beavers have become known as ecosystem engineers or nature's engineers, I think some people refer to them as. They naturally manage rivers, reducing flood risk, and also the positives from a biodiversity perspective when they're introduced into wetlands is significant. And so we have got involved with this project to raise the profile and educate more and more people on the benefits of them and the sort of nature-based solutions that are possible when it comes to stormwater management. And thankfully, through this partnership, we're able to get access to this camera footage, and it's fascinating. You know, it's early days. They've only been in Northamptonshire for a few weeks, but the footage that we've already been sent, we are working on that for future updates and episodes, which members of our Water Matters community will, of course, receive. So it is worth, once again, getting your email in on watermatters.life and subscribing to future updates. Because it's very interesting to see what is going on with this family of beavers in Northamptonshire. But this is why we were able to be present for the release of them a few weeks ago. And episode number 8 brings a few interviews to life. And Tim Smedley, author and environmental journalist, was the perfect person to host these interviews, and he met some fascinating people from the Wildlife Trust. These people being Katie. Katie is the first person interviewed. Katie is the Communities and Education Manager for the Wildlife Trust for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Northamptonshire. And Katie excitedly explains why that day was such a significant day. So her interview was fascinating. That was followed by Lara Jones. Lara is the Special Protection Area Engagement Officer. And again, Lara explains the significance of the day and all the things she's hoping that will come as a result of this family of beavers being introduced at the wetlands. Then that was followed by Matt Johnson. Matt is the Conservation Manager for the Wildlife Trust. And then afterwards, another Matt Jackson, who is the Conservation Director. Both Matts shared, again, their perspective on why this was so significant, why they'd been working on it for such a long time. This is way more than 4 years in the making. And there have been some significant sort of recent delays, certainly at the end of 2024, when they were hoping the release could take place. There were delays after delays after delays, some quite ironic given the reasons for, and you'll find that out when you listen to the interviews. And then the final interview was Nathan Long. Nathan, who we've been working closest with, who is the Corporate Partnerships Manager for the Wildlife Trust. And Nathan explains, as part of his interview, why his role is so important within the Wildlife Trust, because of the amount of support that they need. There's a lot of funding necessary to bring these kind of things to life, these projects. There's so many good things that they are working on, and we all benefit. Listen to that interview, find out why you might want to get involved yourself in your local wildlife trust, whether that's this one for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire, or other areas around the UK. They're doing such a good job, but they do require a lot of support. So we're very pleased to be supported, we're pleased to be involved, we're pleased to be able to have access to this, to bring it to you. We seem to have stumbled across something here which has captivated some interest, which has caught some attention, perhaps because of the significance of it being such a long time since beavers were in England, or just because it's a nature-based solution and it's something that people, have faith in and believe that we want to get back in that sort of go in that direction. Whatever the reasons, it's definitely got some attention. We received a lot of feedback and some comments, and very interesting conversations have been had with listeners and viewers of episode 8. And so this one, episode 9, is a recap, if you like. I wanted to explain more about it. If you have watched or listened to episode 8, then forgive me. There is not a lot more on this episode for you. What I can promise you is that episode 10 in 2 weeks' time is well worth the wait. That one is again, myself and Tim, we're talking about a topic that is very relevant for everyone in the UK that has a water bill, which is most people. So every household. It's an interesting conversation, and one that you should definitely come back and listen to in 2 weeks' time. Look forward to sharing that with you. But if you haven't watched or listened to episode 8, then the rest of this episode is perfect for you. It is these interviews with Katie, with Lara, with Matt, and with Nathan, and then the recap with Tim and Callum at the end. Please do watch it. I know from the feedback we've had so far that there is something in this for everyone, and I hope you enjoy listening to these interviews and finding out why this is such a significant event. This is something that we are going to keep returning to over the next 2 years. We've got some big plans with Water Matters, and this is one of the foundational parts of it, because we have committed to this long-term relationship through Graph UK Limited with the Wildlife Trust for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire, so that we can see the impact, the positive impact that this family of beavers have on the wetlands there. And so we're going to keep returning to it. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone had this opportunity to listen to these initial interviews, to find out what it's all about. Why should you care? Why should you be interested? And why have, so many people been working on this for such a long time? These interviews are just the perfect starting point for you to understand what it's all about from the very start, so that when we do bring you updates and news and more videos and drone shots to show the impact of the sustainable water management that these beavers will be having over the months and years to come, it will all make much more sense to you because you listened to this, episode 9 of the Water Matters podcast. So, thank you once again for listening. Please stick with us and watch to the end of this video for these interviews, so that you're fully educated on this beaver reintroduction in Northamptonshire. If you like it, if you do have feedback for us, please do hit the like, please subscribe, please share it with friends and family. Please, send us feedback as well. You'll receive emails directly from us when you go to watermatters.life, and you can just hit reply to any one of those and we will receive your feedback. We would welcome it. And you're very welcome to our community of people interested in all these topics around sustainable water management. Thank you once again for listening. Enjoy these interviews. Thanks again to Tim and Callum for putting these interviews together for us. And I look forward to returning in 2 weeks' time for episode 10 of the Water Matters podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to Water Matters. We are here in the Nene Valley to see a beaver reintroduction today. I'm hugely excited, looking forward to learning what it's all about and looking forward to telling you in the next episode of Water Matters. Okay, hi, so Katie, could you introduce yourself and tell us where we are and why today is exciting?
Yeah, so my name's Katie. I'm the Education and Communities Manager for Northamptonshire, and we're here today at Nene Wetlands at Delta Pit, which is where we're going to be reintroducing beavers for the first time in 400 years in Northamptonshire.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm super excited too. How long has this been in the planning?
Several years. So long we've almost forgotten where it started. It started sort of as a kind of idea that was thrown out and no one really took it very seriously, and then over the years it's kind of got more and more serious, and now it's actually happening, which is incredible. So, yeah, really exciting.
I guess some people might not know that beavers used to be wild all over England. So when did these kind of reintroductions start happening again?
It's only really been in the last few years. So there was some in Scotland. They're free living in Scotland now. So that was kind of the first trial. That was, I think, about 10 years ago now. And then in England, down the River Otter in Devon, some appeared, and there was a study on those. And then eventually that was decided that actually beavers can come back across the UK, but in England they have to be in enclosures. They're not free releases here. So it's kind of a bit of a study. On our part.
And is this because they're just nice furry mammals, or do they also bring a wider benefit to the wetlands?
So they are a keystone species, so they're here to work for us really. We're hoping they're going to be doing some of the jobs that our conservation team currently have to do with chainsaws. So for example, on this particular lake there's a large area of reed bed. Reed bed grows around the edges of lakes initially, but it needs lots of light, and if you don't manage it then willow will take over, block out the light, and the reed bed will disappear. Reed bed's a really important habitat for lots of species, things like reed warblers, lots of insects, and then the cuckoos as well, so some iconic species. At the moment our team go in and remove the willow to allow the light to get down onto the reed, so that reed bed keeps expanding. But with climate change, flooding is becoming increasingly common. It's really hard for us some years to get in there and do any management. So what the beavers will do, because they will fell the trees to build their lodge, they will do that management for us, and they will allow the reed beds to thrive, and they'll do it in a much more sensitive way than we can with chainsaws. So their plan is they'll increase the biodiversity massively in this area.
Okay, so they could actually save you money in the long run in terms of doing some of the work for you.
That's certainly the hope. Yeah, yes. The initial outlay is quite large, but yes, once they're established, it will mean that this area will basically look after itself.
And tell me about the initial outlay. You don't have to give me exact figures, but presumably the fence was a major outlay, because currently the beavers have to be fenced in according to DEFRA rules.
Yes, that's correct. So yes, definitely the fencing is the biggest outlay, and then there's things like the licence as well. I think, it was over 100,000 for the fence. This is a big area to fence in. So yes, once that's in, that's sort of the main thing out of the way.
Is there any frustration that they do have to be fenced in? Because presumably a lot of the wider benefits would come if the beavers were fully wild, and they have been re-recognised as native species. So is it just, are they stuck in limbo? Is there a beaver grey area at the moment?
Yes, so our permit is for 5 years, and obviously we're really happy that we're able to bring them back. And if that means that we have to have a fence and we see what impact they're going to have, particularly in quite an urban environment, then that's great that we can bring them back, and we're happy to be one of that kind of test study places. But the dream would be for them to be free living in the Nene Valley. There's so much ideal habitat. Flooding is such a big issue in this area. We're on a floodplain. If the beavers are helping us to manage that naturally without having to be in an enclosure, that would be fantastic. But if it means we have to have them fenced in and we can sort of study them first, then that's what we have to do.
What's your hoped for time frame there? Well, what's your, if you could wish for, well, maybe not if you could wish, if you think that DEFRA will allow them to roam fully wild, could that happen in the next few years? Or is it a longer time frame than that?
They've been talking about it for a long time. Obviously, we've had the change of government, so they're still trying to figure out what their kind of views on it. I think Natural England are quite keen, from what I've heard, but I don't know the ins and outs. So it might be within the 5-year permit period. We get to the end of that and they say you don't have to have the fence anymore. That would be the dream. If we don't get to that stage, then hopefully we can get another permit and continue the study as is until we get to the point where we can take the fence down.
Yeah, and just quickly, because we're going to go to the release site very soon.
Yeah.
What benefits do they bring flooding wise? Because you mentioned flood management, but I guess some people might think that beavers build dams and therefore cause flooding, but that's not necessarily the case, right?
No, exactly. So here they're not actually able to access the river because they're fenced off from that. So there's already a big lake here where they're going to be. But what they will do is they will fell the trees, but in order to transport the trees, they'll dig channels which will allow the water to move into new areas. So they increase the capability of the land to hold the water. They'll create pools and channels, and that obviously, the more the ground can hold the water, the less it washes downstream and floods towns and villages further down the valley. So it's really about that water retention. That's what beavers are great at doing.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's get down and see the beavers being released. Okay, Lara, tell me who you are and why we're here and what's just happened.
It's a really exciting day today. My name's Lara. I work for the Wildlife Trust BCN as the Special Protection Area Engagement Officer. And today we have had our beaver release. So we've been waiting for a very long time to reintroduce our beavers. And yeah, today they were released. So we now have beavers on Delta Pit at the Nene Wetlands Nature Reserve.
It was so exciting. So I was luckily there to see the release, and it was quite a moving, emotional moment. Was it? Did you find that too?
Definitely, yes. No, it's been we've been waiting for this for a really, really long time. There's been a lot of planning and a lot of preparation that's gone into it. I work more on the engagement side, so I speak a lot with individuals and communities. For the last year, I've actually been standing at the viewing platform just opposite the release site, sort of asking people if they have any questions or concerns, and yeah, if they wanted to talk about it at all, I was very happy to do so.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what sort of questions and concerns did people have? Because I think there's a lot of myths and misunderstandings about beavers.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the main one would probably be that people were worried they were going to eat all the fish.
Yeah.
Beavers are vegetarians, so we're not worried about that happening too much. People were worried about them getting out and escaping and living wild. We have very robust sort of procedures in place. So we have twice weekly checks of the perimeter of the fence to make sure that there's no activity going on, there's no potential that they might escape. But yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about them being allowed to roam free, because that's where my interest lies, in the beavers as wetland engineers, as keystone species, could really help go some way to solving our water issues, from both flooding point of view to water retention in summer. So the benefits would largely be if they do get to roam free. So are you hoping for that? Do you think there's a vague timescale that might happen within?
Well, it is a government decision, and I'm not within government, so I definitely don't know exactly when that might happen, but I know there has been a lot of discussion about it, particularly within the last year. I know we've seen some fantastic press over the last few days, a really, really great article from the National Geographic showing how 7 years worth of planning and funding had been rendered maybe irrelevant by a pack of wild beavers that sort of set up and decided to make their own wetland. Is that in the Czech Republic, I believe? I can't say when the timeline will be that we will see wild beavers return to the UK, but we're just so happy to have them here at the Nene Wetlands. Again, in a nice, really large enclosure, so we can still definitely see those benefits that they're going to bring. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a huge site here, the whole kind of Nene Valley, gravel pit lakes.
Yep.
So there's potential for them to perhaps start to expand within just this site anyway, if we wanted them to.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, the Nene Valley is has been deemed a suitable site for them in the future, potentially. But as I say, it's not a decision that's been made yet.
And what's your hopes for the next kind of months or so? So what would success look like for the beavers in terms of settling? Are you hoping they build their own lodge anytime soon?
Yep, so we'd like to see them start to build a lodge. I know that we've got a kind of temporary lodge that has been built for them. We'd like to see them do some coppicing, particularly in the areas of wetter woodland that we've got in there in Delta Pit. We've seen significant rises in the water levels, so it will be fantastic for them to be able to fell some trees and open up some areas of light within that, and create some more microclimates and ecological niches to be exploited by a really diverse range of species. And then extending that timeline a little bit further, we're going to see, well, we hope to see a real increase in species abundance and variety, which will be fantastic.
What sort of species abundance are we talking? What could reappear or happen?
Literally everything. It doesn't matter what you're studying. If you're studying kind of flora, invert life, mammals, everything goes up when you put beavers onto a site. If you look at the data, it's absolutely phenomenal. The species accumulation curve on graphs is quite exciting. But I'm a bit of a geek, so I love a graph.
That's going to be exciting to watch. And in terms of tonight, I was wondering, what do you think they will do? Because they don't have a lodge yet, or they could move into the ready-made one.
Honestly, I don't know what they're going to do today. It really is a bit of a mystery. We're very excited to see what they do. Thankfully, we've had a wonderful donation of some camera traps, so we'll be able to kind of watch them and see what it is that they're up to. Yeah,
that's cool. So can people log on? Can the public log on to see what's happening?
Currently, I'm not entirely sure what's happening at this exact moment. As we say, it's just happened right now today. So, but yeah, hopefully in the future there will be a live stream channel where we'll be able to see them.
Yeah. So let's watch this space on what happens to the beavers in the Nene Valley.
Yeah.
And finally, it's a remarkable site. So I've kind of been following beaver reintroductions from afar for a while, and quite often they are fairly remote, and some of the early ones were Devon, Cornwall. But this is right next to a shopping centre. You can see from where we're standing Wagamama and Pret.
Yep.
So presumably from a public engagement point of view, this is a remarkable site.
Yeah, it's definitely been a really unique one. As I say, I've been standing down there at the release site, speaking to passers-by, a lot of whom never really go for walks out in nature. They don't necessarily, a lot of people didn't even know what a beaver was, or they didn't know that beavers were native to the UK at any point. So it's been a fantastic opportunity for me to just be able to spread that positive message about beavers and how incredible they can be for our landscape and ecosystems.
Yeah, and we don't know the way the politics are going to go or where DEFRA's going to go with it. Presumably, any public engagement and raising of public awareness must help.
Absolutely. Yeah, just dispelling that misinformation is really, really important for us. and reassuring people that we really have very robust plans in place. We have really knowledgeable staff members as well, and across the UK there is a fantastic network as well where people can sort of share stories and experiences about their beaver reintroductions. So I think that's really, really key as well. We all work very well together.
Yeah, because there's a lot of sites now, right? So when I was looking into this about 4 years ago, there wasn't many.
Yeah.
Now what was this, 38 today?
I think there's 20. I think there's 29th.
Okay.
I think there was 28 now at the 29th, I believe, of the enclosed releases. Yes.
That map is really starting to light up.
Definitely.
Introductions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Exciting. Well, listen, it's really cold, so let's go in and get a nice tea. Thank you, Noel.
Thank you.
So, Matt, how exciting was that, finally seeing the beavers?
That was amazing. It's a mixture of excitement and relief because it's been 4 years in the planning, but yeah, to see them actually just emerge and then just settle into their new home straight away was brilliant.
I'm glad you said 4 years because I was going to ask you that. So what do you do over those 4 years? Give me an insight into kind of the planning logistics of something like this.
Yeah, so that was 4 years ago when we started talking about it because RSWT, so the Royal Society of Wildlife Trusts, were kind of talking to various trusts and we're kind of actually that could be something we're really interested in. And then we sort of, I don't know, spent a year kind of thinking about which sites, doing a feasibility study, brought the Beaver Trust along to kind of look at where we could, and then sort of settled on Delta Pit where we just released the beavers as the best site to do it. And then we had to go through sort of the permits and licences. So the land's actually owned by the Crown Estate, so there was kind of a bit of time talking to them, getting them on board, and then we had to put our licence application into Natural England, get that approved, get it signed off by the Environment Agency before we even knew we were kind of going ahead with the project. Then we had to fundraise, so we got some funding from Anglian Water, which paid for the fence, and I've had a lot of generous donations from our members and the public as well, just to help make this all happen. And then obviously got seasonal work, so we had to do some tree works to open up sort of a fence line. Then we built the fence over last summer. Then we got hit by a huge flood just before we were about to think we were ready, which meant we had to come back, wait for the water to go down, double the size of the fence, come back and then be almost ready. And then we had an Anglian Water sewage leak here a few weeks ago, so we had to wait for all that to get cleared up and the fence to come down and go back up again before we were finally ready. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, definitely. And the sewage leak, is that kind of fully fixed? Could that
no, it's all good. It was, so there is a main sewer. Obviously, we're in quite a unique place for a nature reserve. It's very sort of bang next to a shopping centre, so it does have all this infrastructure as well. So yeah, there's a main sewer nearby, but yeah, they got onto site very quickly. It didn't get into any of the water courses, but obviously a lot of machinery and people and effort to get down to fix it and get everything reinstated again.
Yeah, definitely. And so the long term, what are you hoping the beavers will bring to this site and to the wetlands?
I guess ideally we'll probably like to keep our fence up for the next 4 or 5 years and be able to monitor what they do to that part of the site. We bring them in partly as a management tool. There's a wet woodland in there with a lot of trees of a similar age and not a lot of undergrowth underneath. So we're hoping that by felling some of the trees and coppicing some of the trees, the beavers will open up sort of glades, muddy areas. They'll dig channels, move water around, and just create a lot more variety in that site, which will benefit not just them but other wildlife as well. We'll get more inverts in there, which will in turn bring in insects and bats and other creatures as well.
And can just one family of beavers do all that?
Yeah, you'd be surprised what they can do. It's a decent sized family. We've got a family of 8, but yeah, over time they will start making a real impact on that site, and it's going to be fascinating to monitor it and see how it progresses. So that's sort of the short to medium term plan. And then hopefully the longer term plan is that at some point the government will allow free releases and we'll be able to take down the fences. And we've got sort of a 250 hectare nature reserve here. Stanley Lakes is a 250 hectare country park next door. So there's a huge area that they can spread out in and do some interesting works as well.
Yeah, the possibility of them going wild and the possibility of DEFRA allowing that is what excites me most, because then you could really see the benefits to the area and to the country at large. But once they got into the river, presumably it would be all bets are off in terms of we don't know what they'll do.
No, or where they'll go. They could, yeah. I mean, we think they'd stick around here because there's so much good habitat. Why would they move? But equally, they might decide they want to explore further. They could go sort of upstream and do some really good sort of natural flood management works and really slow the flow of water coming down to this part of the site, which could be really good. And we kind of, hopefully that is something that will happen in the future, this kind of free release. And we're kind of hoping that we can be part of the process that gets us there by proving you can have beavers in a very unique, urban, busy, well-visited setting, and they can coexist quite nicely together.
And presumably there's a really good public engagement tool there as well. People coming to do their shopping might come into the visitor centre, go, wow, there's beavers here, what are they about? And that might then help to move the needle politically, maybe, in terms of...
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of opportunity. We're stood here just outside our visitor centre, and you can see the beaver enclosure just behind us. It's a stone's throw away. And there's Pret and Wagamamas and Next and all these shops that get thousands of people, millions of people a year. That, yeah, it's a great opportunity to engage them with really exciting wildlife right on their doorstep and tell that story.
And do you get the sense from working with Anglian Water that the water companies are starting to cotton on to the benefits of beavers? That actually beavers can start to do some of their job for them and start to improve our water system more generally?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why Anglian Water is so keen to be involved in the story, because they see it as a way of sort of improving water quality, reducing flooding, sort of, yeah, dealing with some of the issues nationally that they're facing with at the moment, and this could be a first step towards that. Yeah,
definitely. So long term, you're hoping that fence can be removed and we'll see the full benefits. Let them loose.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, probably once we've done a good study, we've learnt a lot, which will be really useful as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's also remarkable to think of that in terms of picturing all the other reintroductions around England and potentially them starting to join up in the medium term.
Yeah, it's interesting sort of when you look at national talks and people produce maps of where the enclosures are, and they are starting to sort of populate more. Like there has been a big gap in this part of the country. I'm not sure there's another enclosure within sort of 40 miles of here in any direction. So we're really, adding a significant dot on the map.
And when do you think you might have other beavers down here to, help to populate and breed with the kits when they're older?
Well, I guess these guys will keep growing their family. They've done pretty well in the last few years up in Tayside. We've got 3 kits that they've brought down that were born last year, and then 3 from the year before. So hopefully this family will grow. And then we've got other lakes here that we'd love to bring beavers down to in the future.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to watching how it expands. Yes. I'm looking forward to bringing my family down here as well, actually. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it's a perfect opportunity for that. It's kind of for people who are really into their wildlife, but also people who just have more of a passing interest or want to learn more. It's kind of, a real great opportunity.
Yeah, or people that just like shopping in Pret and getting to go for a walk afterwards.
And with the chance of seeing a beaver, yeah. Where else could you do that?
Brilliant. Cheers, Matt.
Okay, thank you.
So we have another Matt from the Wildlife Trust. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. My name's Matt Jackson. I'm the Conservation Director for the Wildlife Trust.
So do you cover the whole country or are you regional?
No, Wildlife Trusts are pretty much, there's one for every county in the UK. We're slightly unusual in that we merged together 30 odd years ago, and we now cover Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire, so a sizable chunk of central England. It's a good patch to cover. It's big, but it's not too big for us to really know it properly.
And when did you first start talking about beavers internally or thinking of it as an idea?
Oh, blimey, 20 odd years ago.
Really?
Yes, yeah. We know that these larger mammals are the bit that's missing from our countryside. We've been pretty ruthless in the UK in terms of getting rid of particularly our larger wildlife. And some of these animals are the things that drive the way the countryside works. So there's been a lot of thinking about how we might bring this forwards. A real change in the last 10 years. Particularly in terms of policy nationally, but also in terms of people just getting on and doing it. So we're tagging on to a movement that's happening nationally, but doing our bit here.
Yeah, and I guess we've got Scotland to thank, because that's where the original reintroductions happened, both slightly guerrilla reintroductions and official, but that was kind of turn of the century, this century, wasn't it?
I think Scotland, big difference, and yes, the Scottish were much more proactive. Interestingly, Devon has been a bit of a trailblazer as well, and we had some beavers that were released, probably, well, we know illegally, into, oddly, the River Otter in Devon. But actually, the reaction there, particularly from local conservationists who persuaded DEFRA we're going to whip them out and take them away, and they said, well, hang on, the landowner's happy, the locals are happy, let's wait and see what happens here. Oddly, they had to be trapped, check that they weren't carrying parasites and then re-released. But that was a real step change in terms of saying, well, actually, not everybody is against this. We don't need to react to this as being a problem. Let's see what opportunities there are that arise from putting back an animal that actually helps us change the landscape.
And the River Otter, as you say, has had beavers for a while. Have they seen benefits in terms of water retention or flood prevention, or is it too small now?
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. There's really good studies by the University of Exeter working with landowners down there who've looked at all sorts of aspects of the way water moves through the countryside. And basically what beavers do is they slow the way water moves through the countryside. They don't, in this country, as far as we're aware, dam rivers. That tends to happen on the big river systems in sort of Central Europe and North America. Here they tend to dig pools, make small dams, create small wetland areas, and that's such a key component of keeping water in the countryside, letting it percolate slowly through it. It helps with flooding, and we know it helps take the peak off flood flows, but it helps in terms of getting that variety back into the countryside as well. So much of our countryside is uniform, and what it needs is a good bit of variety, and beavers do that by the bucket load.
Yeah. I believe it's been said that this is the first beavers here for 400 years. Do we have a good time frame on that?
So 400 years is the national figure. We know that we thought it was a lot longer, but actually there are some records have turned up in York that we know they were hanging on in there. What tends to happen with extinctions is you lose the bulk very quickly, but then small pockets hang on for a long time. As it happens in Northamptonshire, the last record we're aware of is just over 900 years ago. That comes from some archaeological work in Northampton where looking through the layers of pits, one single beaver tooth turns up in a pit pretty much pitched to about 900 years ago from now. We've not had anything turn up more recently than that, so these may well be the first beavers back in Northamptonshire in just shy of a millennium.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So as you were saying, extinctions can happen over a period of time, possibly that people just didn't write about the last beaver, they didn't know it was the last beaver.
Yeah, no, indeed, and that sort of tail end, as it were, of losing things happens for a long time. But we know that they'd stopped being a regular part of the countryside much earlier than that. They were hunted for all sorts of reasons, I'm sure you know, but particularly scent. They were used for scent, partly because they're just big and slow and easy to catch. They're much easier to catch than some other mammals. So we know we'd lost the bulk of them much earlier than that. But it's just so exciting to be bringing them back for probably the first time in 900 years.
Yeah, and can you believe we're talking at the moment whilst we know that there are now beavers swimming in the lake behind us?
Yeah, it's just amazing, absolutely amazing. They're there, they seemed happy, seemed to get off to a good start. We'll be keeping a close eye on them, of course, but yeah, it's an historic moment. It's a real change for our landscape and hopefully the start of something much bigger.
And it feels like one small step for beavers. We're going to have one giant leap for beaver kind. Do they have to be out into the rivers?
Oh, yes, yeah. There's no reason they shouldn't be. There's an awful lot of concern about these things. I'm old enough to remember when otters had almost disappeared from our countryside, and there was a big push to bring otters back in the early 1990s. A lot of concern about the impact they were going to have. They're now just a regular feature of our countryside. We live alongside them. It's not, I don't see them that often, but it's not unusual for people to see them swimming past. It's there's a lot of fear and trepidation. Beavers, totally herbivorous, don't have any impact on fishing, those sorts of things. In fact, they can create good spawning grounds for fish, so have really positive effects. There's absolutely no reason they shouldn't be out there. We may need to move them occasionally if they're creating wet areas in places with electricity substations or whatever else it may be, but actually we know we can move them around the countryside fairly easily. They should be part of our natural wildlife community and just part of our existence.
So what do you think the sticking point is? What do you think is causing DEFRA to make no decision on this issue? Is it farming and farmland and lobbies from the NFU and so on?
Well, the fear at the moment is that it's odd, isn't it, that we didn't have any sort of real oomph behind the thought of wild beaver releases until oddly Michael Gove took over at DEFRA, and it was interesting from our perspective. He appeared to join DEFRA without any sort of fixed idea of what he was going to do. It was a surprise to everybody when he ended up at DEFRA, and I suspect a surprise to Michael Gove himself. So he didn't come with an agenda, and he looked at what needed to be done, and this was something it's easy to do. It makes a big change. It's relatively straightforward. So he was really keen to push it. The worry at the moment is that it's seen as somehow something the Conservatives were really keen on, and we need to get past that. This is something that's just a really easy step change for us to make from the countryside. There's no reason it shouldn't happen. It's not even as if there are huge campaigns against it. There are people who are concerned about it. We think those concerns are largely misfounded. But it just needs a bit of oomph behind it. There's no reason they should be only allowed in fences. They should be out in the wild. They do create problems. Everything creates problems, but they're small problems and they're easily dealt with.
Yeah, and the solutions they create far outweigh the problems, especially from preventing flooding downstream and storing water for drought periods.
Yeah. They were part of the way our natural systems work, part of the way our river systems work. We tend now to channel our rivers, get the water moving as quickly as we can. We're learning now that creates huge problems downstream. Actually, the best way to deal with water is slow the way it moves through the landscape, let it move more naturally. And beavers are the natural way of doing that.
And it also strikes me from a farming objection perspective that we're not talking about prime, pristine farmland here. These are fields that are going to flood anyway if they're next to a floodplain.
Yeah, we do have some subsidy issues that are a problem there. So one of the things we shouldn't be doing is paying for crops to be grown in floodplains where they're really uneconomical. They get flooded out every few years. But if we're subsidising that, it can push for them to be there. What we should be doing is subsidising the natural management of our systems. There are ways and means of doing that. We're starting to do that for flooding. We should be doing that on the broader scale so that farmers who want to work with the countryside, they are the custodians of the countryside. A lot of them are actually very positive about these sorts of steps, but our financial systems work against them, so we do need to push that in the right direction.
I believe farmers in Scotland are allowed to cull beavers, or is there a certain element of culling? Presumably we're hoping not to have that down here.
We're a long way from having to think about culling, mostly because it's just relatively easy to move them. So we know now how best to trap them, pretty good record at trapping them if they are in problem places. And at the moment, there's so much of the countryside that doesn't have beavers. We shouldn't need to be thinking about culling for an awfully long time. There's plenty of opportunity to find new places for them where they'll just create wonderful habitat.
And finally, what are you hoping to see here in a year's time in the Nene Valley? What are you hoping to see the beavers have done then?
Well, one of the beauties of this sort of management is that we don't really know. We know broadly what changes they'll make, but the specifics of where they'll do it and precisely how they'll do it is something the beavers will decide rather than us. So some of it is the excitement of the unknown. We are expecting to see a lot more small wetland creation around the edges of the large gravel pit that they've gone into. They like to create damp areas. We are hoping to see more dead trees, which is a funny thing for us to say, but one of the problems we have with a lot of these gravel pits in central England is they were dug out in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They're surrounded by scrub that's all the same age. There's no variety in them, and particularly dead and dying trees were a natural part of the countryside, so we have all sorts of insect communities that are associated with that, and the beavers will bring that on at a hell of a pace. So we're looking to see a change in our communities. Again, back to being just more natural.
And that might create habitat for new species to arrive as well, possibly.
Yeah, we do have. We had Natterer's bat turn up here for the first time known in the last few years, which is amazing. So we do pick up new species from time to time. We are seeing change in the countryside, and we haven't talked about climate change, but climate change is driving all sorts of changes for us. So we are expecting the countryside to change. What we need to do is make that countryside more robust so it can cope with that change and making it just more natural. That's what beavers are about. It's making it more natural. It makes it much more resilient so that we hopefully will see those changes. It's going to be exciting times.
Yeah, it's a great point, actually. I mean, I write about climate resilience a lot and talk about it a lot. Beavers are almost the front line of climate resilience for our country now.
That variety I was talking about, if you need that so that you've got the right niches for things to move into, if you've got a uniform countryside that's all doing the same thing, it just doesn't have the variety of places for animals to live. So we need to be creating that variety. And as you say, beavers do that in spades.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
So, hi, Nathan. Tell me who you are and what your role is today.
Hi there, so my name's Nathan and I'm the Corporate Partnerships Manager for the Wildlife Trust of both Cambridgeshire Northamptonshire.
So I've met a few of your colleagues already today and we're nearing the end of the day, but it's been a remarkable day, hasn't it?
It certainly has, yeah. It's been an incredibly exciting day and one that it's just brilliant to finally see come to fruition after such a long time of planning and talking about it and thinking about how it might go. To see it finally happen, it's just been brilliant.
So tell me about it from an engagement point of view, because some of your colleagues have told me some of the logistics of it and some of the kind of details of beavers and what they bring to the wetlands. But what's the engagement side of it been like?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a really interesting process. It's obviously been incredibly important to us to engage with the local community, with local people, local businesses, to let them know our aims and ambitions, why we're doing it, and the benefits that will come from that. It's all very well doing some of these great projects that the Wildlife Trust does, but without the support and understanding of the community, they're not really going to achieve what we hope to set out to do. And long term, we need to have people understanding and backing these kind of projects to see the importance and the value that they can bring. And it's really key that we try and achieve that.
And the flip side of that, presumably keystone species such as beavers really help to engage people and maybe engage people with the Wildlife Trust in your wider work.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's very easy to assume that other people will understand the importance of, say, bringing back insects or other creatures that we have that are equally as important as beavers, but they might not capture the imagination quite as much as a large mammal that we're not used to seeing in the landscape and that should really be there and does belong. So absolutely, beavers are a really great tool to capture the imagination and engage the community with a really exciting project, one that people can get behind and learn about the benefits of doing this kind of work.
And what's the commercial reality of doing a scheme such as this? Because presumably it's not cheap to put all those fences up. Wildlife Trust, you're a local part of the wider Wildlife Trust body, but presumably you're not loaded with money. So how do you attract funding for these things?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're certainly not loaded with money. It's a big project and it does come with a lot of expense. It might seem like it's a very simple process of grab some beavers and throw them in a lake, but there's a lot more behind it than that and a lot of funding needed to make projects like this work and become a success. The funding structure for the Wildlife Trust is that we are completely reliant on donations and income generation from the public, from local organisations and businesses. Just like Graph UK, who have helped make this project a reality in a way. It's key that we get that kind of funding to make projects like this what they should be, and what they can be. We are limited very much in what we can do by the funding we have. And we have all sorts of ideas and plans, but without that money, they're just not going to work. This project is a good example of that. And as you've already mentioned, things like the fencing, incredibly expensive and important part of the project. Without it, we're simply not allowed to do releases like this. It's specialised material that needs to be to withstand the reality of having beavers trying to gnaw at them and other animals in the area, and they have to be a certain standard as well. So as I think Matt mentioned earlier about needing to extend them to a certain size to be above flooding levels, other things like that. On top of that, there's an awful lot of logistics involved in terms of the health monitoring and checking of the beavers, the staff involved that need to monitor the project, the tools required to create that area and keep it in a good condition for beavers to make sure it's safe, and of course safe for the general public as well. That's another key part of this. We are reliant on the income we get from our donations and our membership from the public to keep areas like this open and enjoyed by the public. Without that funding, it just simply wouldn't exist.
Yes, so from a public engagement point of view, this is an interesting site because it's very public, right next to a really busy shopping centre. That brings some real positives in terms of engagement and awareness of beavers. What are the downsides for beavers? Presumably you don't want dog walkers walking around the beaver sites all the time.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, we want to create a bit of a balance, I guess, if you like, of making sure that there are areas and places that people can engage with nature and get out and enjoy it and get all those benefits we know are there from a mental health perspective and well-being of being out in nature. But also, you're absolutely right, the impact we've got to monitor as well in terms of the amount of footfall, the amount of disturbance. We have a real issue on our hands in certain places where there is a high number of dog walkers, where people often aren't following the rules as such as well in terms of keeping their dogs on leads, which does create a lot of disturbance. And a lot of people would say, it's not my dog and, my dog wouldn't hurt anything, but it's not about the actual worry about something being, an animal being hurt or injured. It is that disturbance aspect. And a beaver product like this is exactly the same as that in terms of that disturbance. Luckily with the fencing here, it's not quite so much of an issue at the moment, but the long term, when we hopefully take down the fencing, it is something we will have to monitor and be careful of. We want people to be able to enjoy these areas, whether it's taking their dog for a walk or not, but do have to think about the wildlife as well. And obviously that's our main kind of aim here.
Yeah, and actually we've spoken a lot today about looking forward to the time when the fences are removed, but initially those fences are actually kind of helping protect the beavers then.
Absolutely. I've myself been out there engaging with the public and talking about what we're trying to achieve here and what we're going to do, and a lot of questions are asked about the safety around this and what issues might be from bringing in beavers. One of the questions I do get asked is, are they going to pose a threat to my pets, my dogs, when I'm out on a walk? And it's actually quite the opposite of that. Beavers are very kind of docile in general, and actually we would have concerns about dogs attacking beavers much more than the other way around. But yes, as you say, luckily at the moment at least the fence is there and giving them some kind of protection. Long term, we don't envisage it to be too much of an issue, as they are quite secretive. They tend to be mostly nocturnal in their activities as well a lot of the time, so we shouldn't see too much interaction, but it is something we'll have to monitor in the future and be aware of.
Yeah, actually the fact that they're nocturnal, maybe there's pluses and minuses there too. Less interaction, less danger of a dog running at them, but also maybe less for the public to see.
Absolutely, yeah. Once again, it's striking that balance. We are very keen to have people come out and see what the beavers are doing and hopefully see the beavers themselves, but it is an unlikely scenario. They are very secretive, they are often nocturnal in their habits, and yes, the idea that people might go, oh, we're going to go see the beavers, that would be great, and expecting to rock up and just see a family of beavers splashing around, frolicking in the water. It's a lovely thought, lovely idea, but sadly it's not really going to be the reality. And if you do see a glimpse of a tail splash in the corner, you're very lucky, and that is a great thing to be able to see. But we are hopeful to, through the use of the trail cameras we've set up, capture as much footage as we can of the beavers and their behaviour, and be able to use that as an engagement tool and show the public what they're doing and the brilliant kind of habitats and changes they're making to the site here and what they're going to create. And a lot of that we have thanks to Graph UK for their sponsorship of the cameras that they've put in place. It's a really key part of projects like this, and without that kind of support from local businesses and other donors in the community, we just wouldn't be able to achieve these kind of things, and we are really grateful for that support and looking for more support. So for anyone that is thinking about how can we get involved, how can we support things like this, please do reach out to the Wildlife Trust, whether it's your local one or our one or any of them across the country, because we are always in need of support. And there are many projects that we have on the side of our desk that we would like to get off the ground and make work, but we just simply can't do it without the funding and support.
Yeah, and I know Affinity Water have helped as well, so props to them. But do you think that water companies in general around the country should be supporting these schemes, because they're ultimately going to benefit from flood prevention, from drought prevention? These are effectively frontline water engineers, so hopefully water companies will start funding this work too.
Absolutely. I think Anglian Water have played a key role in making this project a reality, and as you say, I think it's very much in their interest as much as ours. It's a win-win, I would say, and an easy win-win to create cleaner water, create better environments, and reduce the pressures on flooding and other things that water companies are struggling with these days. So for them to get on board was a really kind of good option for them to make a positive impact, not only for their current work with water and water purity and pressure on flooding, but also to make a good impression to the public, to show that they're supporting projects like this. Because at the end of the day, we know that people care about this kind of thing. They want to see these projects happening. They want to bring back the ecosystems we once had here and bring back keystone species like beavers that are going to make such a brilliant impact on environments like this.
Apparently there's a beaver storyline on the Archers at the moment on Radio 4. Have you heard this?
I haven't myself, but it's certainly one I'd like to hear more about.
My mum has told me about it, and I'm going to have to listen to the Archers now, because there's a lot of controversy in Ambridge apparently, and I think those kind of, from an engagement point of view, that could actually reach a new audience. So
absolutely.
Everyone's talking about beavers now.
Good, as they should do. They're fascinating creatures, amazing tools for the landscape, and there's something we should see more of across the UK.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
Pleasure, Nathan.
Thanks very much. Great.
Tim, what a day we have had here in Northamptonshire watching the release of Beavers for the first time, and I found it out today, in over 900 years. Feels like such a historic day.
Yeah, it really does. It's been a remarkable day. I think it's going to take a while for this smile to subside, because I'm just going to be grinning ear to ear for days. Amazing to see Well, amazing to see beavers, first of all. I've never seen a beaver. I've been talking about the benefits of beavers for years since writing my book. Not seen one because they're normally nocturnal animals, really hard to see. So amazing to see one. But to actually see the first time that beavers have returned to wetlands in Northamptonshire for, we think 900 years. But in England, it's the first time for hundreds of years with the recent reintroduction. So, we can always say that we were here and we saw it.
For years to come, this might be a historical moment, especially when they look to rewild them in future areas of the country. But you touched on it there. You've been researching this subject. You've researched it heavily for your book. We mentioned this a lot on the podcast. So through your research, did it scream out to you that this was such an important thing to do for natural habitat?
Definitely. It's one of my favourite solutions to talk about because it touches so many things. So as well as a climate crisis, we also have a biodiversity crisis and we have a water crisis. Beavers kind of help on all three scores. So obviously beavers are not going to do much about climate change, but they can do a lot about climate resilience. They can help to re-wet our wetlands. They can help to store water for drought times. Beavers essentially do that by building little dams across side streams and rivers. Eurasian beavers, as we've seen released today, are different to the American beavers. So American beavers are what we all picture because they've never gone extinct in North America. American beavers build huge dams that go across grand rivers. And I can see why some people might be concerned if we had that here. Fortunately, Eurasian beavers don't do that. They create kind of just little dams, really. They slow water down rather than fully blocking it off. And they do that purely to extend their habitat. They don't, as we've learned many times today, eat fish. They're not a risk factor to fish populations. But in building those dams, they both slow down flood water, so they are a flood prevention measure. I probably shouldn't call them measure. They deserve a better word than that. And they are a drought prevention. I think they've been called water engineers in their own right. So beavers are a huge part, believe it or not, of solving our water crisis.
And this is what Matt kind of touched on at during his interview, where he said, we always thought moving the water as fast as possible away from the site is what's needed, but we've actually learnt reducing the pace and slowing it down, and they just do it naturally. So why haven't they been reintroduced so much sooner, I guess?
Yeah, it is a case of relearning water engineering. So really from the Victorian times onwards, we have straightened our rivers, we have dredged our rivers, we have tried to channel water as quickly away as possible. There's many downsides to that we've since learned. One of the big ones is you're creating almost more fuel for flooding. You're pushing water downstream quicker, causing bigger floods. But you've got nowhere for that flood water to go. So we need floodplains. Rivers have floodplains for a reason. Rivers are supposed to flood in winter. When they do, that water sits in those floodplains for a while and then seeps down once the rains go away. That seeping down is hugely important for where our water comes from, for groundwater, for filling up aquifers. A lot of our water from water companies comes from boreholes. So we need water in the ground, and to do that you need floodplains and you need rivers that are allowed to flood. So that straightening and deepening of rivers was the exact opposite, really, of what we needed to do from a water and flood point of view. But as you say, beavers can naturally solve that problem for us, and it's certainly not the case of bringing in some alien species to kind of do something they shouldn't be here to do. Beavers have been part of our water system in this country until very recently. So the last beaver recorded was in York in 1789. That's not that long ago, really. So for centuries and centuries, thousands of years, beavers created our water system. They manage, in a way, our river system, and our rivers are supposed to be wider. They're supposed to reach out to floodplains. So bringing them back will also bring our water back.
And you touched on it a second ago where you're saying we're kind of relearning the positive effects they have, and that's certainly I've taken away from today is there's a lot of learning and education required to really get people on board in order to see this initiative and schemes through. I mean, we spoke to the likes of Nathan. He had a lot of work of engaging the community, answering questions. A lot of people kind of had their own personal worries, and it's a lot about educating. Do you think that's one of the biggest barriers they have to overcome, is the re-education?
Yeah, so there's a really interesting phrase in environmental circles called shifting baseline syndrome. That basically means we think of the natural world as how it was when we were kids, everything that was there when we were younger and has since died out, we see that as the issue. We forget that a generation before there was more nature and there was more wildlife. A generation before that there was more. So I think beavers suffer from that problem a little bit, in that all the generations that remember beavers are obviously long gone. And so we think of them as not natural and not a natural part of our landscape. So that's where re-education comes in, to remind us all, including me, I didn't know this until I started writing the book, that beavers should be here in the UK and Europe more widely. They should be part of our river systems and natural landscape. And our water system, our aquifers, are fairly reliant on them to keep recharged. So yeah, education's a huge part of it. And that's why this site is really exciting. It's the most, I guess, publicly accessible site I've come across for beaver reintroductions. It's literally next to a large retail shopping centre and car park. So yeah, it's got huge potential to really inform and educate the public about the benefits of beavers.
Because that was one thing you were kind of surprised at when we came here. You've gone to a lot of sites where there has been reintroductions, and they're very rural, they're very out the way of kind of any human interaction or intervention. But here we are literally on a boardwalk by a really busy shopping centre, a really nice shopping centre. But there's a lot of potential human interaction with them. And I guess that's a lot of the concern they have. Do people need to kind of rethink about how they interact with them? Because obviously we've said that they won't be, but a lot of people are worried about it in that sense.
Yeah, I think there's some public concern, but I do think that will ebb away. I mean, we were talking to some people earlier that have, helped set up this scheme. And I think one of the biggest worries that people have is that they'll eat all the fish, but beavers don't eat fish. So that's fairly easy to solve, to answer. So I think as soon as people learn about beavers, I think a lot of those fears go away.
And they've even got evidence they improve the waterways so much with the ecosystem and the environment. They improve actually fish stock and kind of their breeding grounds in a sense. So if anything, it's more of a positive than a negative.
Yeah, and remarkably, they bring a lot of species in. So in the clearing of reed beds and clearing of willow, they create habitat for new species. I think we're starting to learn this around the country now with other rewilding projects, such as the Knepp estate, that a keystone species can bring back a lot of other species. So this could well become a more popular wildlife spotting destination than it's ever been, and it already is pretty popular.
And like they said, there's so much scope for it to be really improved, because was it 250 hectares, the whole valley?
Something like that, yeah.
And if they can, hopefully one day remove the fences so they can just naturally go along the lakes and along the plains, they could really do a lot to benefit the local area.
Yeah, I think so, and that's what I am most excited about. So today has honestly been one of the most exciting days for a long, long time of writing and talking about water systems, water management. But what I really want to see happen is that fence being removed and them being allowed to go fully wild. And then we can really see how beavers change and adapt and improve our water system. And that won't happen until they're allowed in rivers.
What impact will that have then when the fences do come up?
Yeah, so what will initially happen is that they will find the nearby river. So the River Nene is just beyond this site. This is what kind of essentially formed these gravel pit lakes. Beavers will find their way to there. They naturally want to find moving water and dam it. That's basically their natural instinct, to create other wetland habitats. Once that happens, that then improves flood management downstream. I'm not sure exactly where we are here in terms of the nearest habitation. It's probably Northampton, right? So flooding in Northampton will be benefited in terms of a positive effect of reducing of flooding. They will spread out the river in certain places. They will create more wetland habitat, which will benefit various plants and trees. Typically, beaver habitations create more woodland. Again, this is something that people don't realise about beavers. They are assumed to just cut down all the trees, and therefore it's bad from a forestation point of view. It's the opposite of that. They do cut down some trees, but they create more habitat in general. So wetted woodland is improved and expanded. And as I say, the big impact from kind of a selfish human perspective is that the droughts we're getting every summer are alleviated, not kind of fully, but there is much more water in the aquifers because that water's had a chance to seep down in winter because of these extended wetlands and extended floodplains caused by beavers. So it would be a huge impact if they're allowed to go fully free.
And that's what everyone is hoping. I think that's what everyone here wants to get behind. They want to use this space to really show people and get the evidence of what they can actually do and the benefit they'll bring to the natural environment and ecosystem. And after meeting some of them, I truly hope that is going to be the case because they really want it. They really, truly care. And that's something that I've taken away. They truly care about this project.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to meet so many people that really care about beavers because, as I say, I'm often the only person talking about them. So, yeah, I found my people today.
And, yeah, everyone, guys, they care so much about where they work and they have such a deep investment in it. And you just really hope for the best. It will then, the fences will come down and they will be able to free roam and other people see the benefit of them.
Yeah, I really agree. And the wildlife trusts in general are a real force for good. And they've been pushing a lot of the reintroductions around the country, often with very little funding. So, yeah, they will play a remarkable role in the history of the return of beavers to this country.
Which is, I mean, great to see the more, as you said, the benefits of introduction of them. And we've talked to a lot of people that really care so much and invested in it. They really want those fences to come up and they're really pushing for it.
Yeah, definitely. And also one thing I've gathered from today is, although they really want the fences to come up and beavers to go fully wild, I think they're quite happy for a year or two at least of just seeing how it goes and being able to study and really learn about beavers. And I think that's probably an important step too, to see exactly what the beavers do in this, I guess, managed wetland environment. See how it improves the reed beds, as you say, and how it improves the clearance of some of the fallen woodland and willow beds. So, yeah, I think actually from coming here today, I've learned that, yeah, it would be interesting to just watch and learn and, using the camera traps that you've set up, learn how the beavers adapt to this environment.
Well, it's a good thing you say that because we're sponsoring the cameras. We're hoping to see beavers in action. However, they're only trying to predict what's going to happen. They actually don't truly know. So to your point, by keeping them here enclosed for a year or two really helps them to understand their behaviour because at the moment they're predicting it. They can't really truly say for definite.
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll all benefit from that knowledge. I mean, obviously there have been reintroductions in other parts of the country already, so there's already a pretty good knowledge base, and the Beavers Trust have a lot of good research and documentation on this now. But yeah, in this particular site, I think it is useful to watch and learn for a while, and then hopefully, as I say, release them to the wild.
And it's a good thing to see that this is the biggest family we've seen reintroduced. Plus, what they're now doing is because the reintroductions have become positive, they've had the outcome they've won, is they're rewilding the English beavers rather than bringing them all the time from Scotland. They're actually relocating the ones they've already relocated. So in a good way, it's working. The snowball is starting to churn in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. We're seeing that map of reintroductions really light up over England now. I think there was one in Shropshire last week. So yes, there's so many more English sites now than obviously ever before until the last time they were wild. So now, although again we saw Scottish reintroduction today, I think pretty soon we'll start seeing sharing between the English sites more commonly than just bringing them down from Scotland.
And it kind of proves that the theory is working because the beavers we are reintroduced into the UK, or England, sorry, are healthy. They're doing the role they need to be doing. So let's keep on going.
Yeah, definitely. And as I say, with that map lighting up, as soon as that green light is given from DEFRA that they can be released into the wild, they'll be closer to each other to start meeting up. So yeah, it's really exciting times.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like such a historical event that we managed to witness. So we are very grateful and blessed for having the opportunity. So thank you for your time today, Tim. I know you've thoroughly enjoyed it. The smile on your face has absolutely been it. And thank you everyone for listening and taking part of this journey with us. We'll be keeping you up to date with all the beavers and activity, hopefully showing some of the footage of them in action as long as the cameras manage to catch them. And yeah, it's again, we're losing the live birds. Brilliant day. Absolutely brilliant day.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It really has.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.